Good evening, everyone. Tonight is March 23rd, 2022. It is 6:47 p.m. We've had a bit of a delay with our computer system down. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On to letter B, the consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
This is Janet. I'll move to approve consent agenda items 3 through 5 and number 10.
Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Any questions or comments, anyone? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Very good. On to letter C, a public open forum. Is there anyone who would like to speak at the public open forum? On to number 12, the Planning Commission report. Is there someone here who would like to give us the report?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to mention that because I live across the street from this property that I'm going to remove myself from the conversation.
Thank you. That was Sue Agaman. She'll recuse herself from the conversation. Before we begin.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. One thing I'd like to say, it's really good to be back. I think this is the first time I've been back here doing a presentation since last year, so.
And no mask.
Will you pull your microphone a hair closer?
Can't hear me? Can you now?
That's better.
Better.
So the Planning Commission met on March 16th, 2022, and really the only order of business was a public hearing for a conditional use permit amendment for Blake Drilling Company, which is located at 13528 Lake Drive Northeast. Representing the company was John Williams and Jill Bukowski. Good. The applicant, Michael Myers, could not be present at the time for that. It's an amended CUP because back in 2016, they were in and they were issued a CUP for their business, which I'm not going to go into details what they do, but for their business. And the original CUP allowed them to build the first building, which is standing right now, which I believe is their shop area, which is 150 by 50. And at that time, they were going to do a phase 2, which was going to be about 5-6 years later, and they were going to build the office warehouse, which was, I think, going to be 200 by 60. So now we fast forward. And they've changed the size of the building they want to build to, I think it's 260 by 70, which made them come in to do an amendment to their existing CUP. We did hear the Wagamans talk on, you know, how wonderful it was that they, when they set up the original CUP, they gave
Recording in progress.
Are we back? They gave a buffer so that between the residence that's to the west, I think, and the business, there was some residential property that was left and then some other property so that there wasn't, they weren't buttoned up to the residences that were back there. The Planning Commission kind of was split. One of the issues that came up with the new CUP is the city ordinance or the design standard is a building in the commercial industrial can't be more than 50% metal. Am I wording that right? That it's 50, it can't be more than 50% metal, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And
Facing the public right away.
yes, facing the public right away, which on Lake Drive is the 260 feet. And their building design has wainscot, which is brick, and then the rest is metal. I think the original plan we saw was a little over 25%, which was brick, and the rest was metal. And then they did bring in a different one, which showed 33.7% was non-metal exterior on the east, and 31.65% on the south. We kind of were split because we don't want to not let them build. I mean, we want them to come into Columbus, and they're a great business. They want to move everything from Blaine to this site and build this building. It'll be great for Columbus and for them. But not meeting the 50% did create a problem with the Planning Commission, because we do feel they need to meet that. So what we did is we did vote for it to come before you, and the one recommendation that we added, besides all the other city recommendation, was that they would provide an updated architectural plan and/or landscape plan in combination to bringing the easterly building facade facing the public right-of-way closer to the compliance with the intent of commercial industrial design standard. So that's kind of where we left it. So it's not to throw it into your lap, but I think it is. I hate to say it, but it is. It comes down to a policy question, and we're not the ones making policy. So we were trying to work with them to say we need to get closer to this 50%. So the applicant is here, and I'm sure you have questions for them.
Oop. Oh, never mind.
Oh, there we go. That's their new design. Now, I believe, Elizabeth, you said, because the original CUP in the street facing didn't meet that either, but the front, or it would be the southerly, had more brick on it, and they had 2 doors, they had more brick, bigger windows, so it was passed back at that time because they felt that they met more the intent of the code.
That is correct. Originally in 2016, the front entryway did meet the 50% requirement, and they agreed to put the 25% around the entire building. As we knew, this was a 2-phased project, and they were building the shop first, and then they would come back and build the offices and warehouse. So I think at the time, the council felt appropriate that because it met the 50% to the front of the building, and you could see that from the public right-of-way, that the intent of the code was met. Today, after listening to the Planning Commission and their discussions, I think it was evident that the Planning Commission felt that the code was 50% and that standard should be met, although they realized that the applicant had a different standard in 2016, and then felt ultimately the decision, as Chris indicated, would be up to the City Council. I've had an opportunity to talk with our city attorney earlier yesterday, and explained to him what the Planning Commission recommendation was, and he indicated to me that in this particular case, the only option would be a variance, that the council really didn't have discretion without a variance to give or award a lower standard for the building exterior. So I will turn it over to Bill, and if you've got questions as to why he came to that conclusion. We did pass that on to the applicants. The applicants are here this evening. From my understanding, the discussion we had with them was they will meet that 50% standard. They're here tonight because they want to be heard for a small presentation, as they feel that they understand why the council, that there's no building design elevations before the council, so they wouldn't be able to make a decision based on the building design. But again, they've said that they will meet that building design, but they're here before you because they want to ask that you approve the conditional use permit tonight. So if the mayor will recognize them and want to entertain their short presentation, you can certainly do that, or continue your discussion. But again, they're here tonight.
Why don't you guys come up? Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
And would
Good
you
evening.
state your names for the record, please?
My name is John Williams.
Jill Bukowski.
So most of us were at the planning commission meeting last week when you guys represented your plans. And you thought you would be able to have a new set of elevations for us to look at.
Correct. We're not able to get those through, everybody's backlogged, as you can imagine. So I'm here today, I guess, in asking that if we can approve the amended CUP for the size of the building, with the understanding that our intent is to get that 50% design standard met on the east side of the building. We're being told that we will have drawings available for the for the April 13th council meeting. So our intent is to meet that 50%, have the plans in front of you guys to be able to view those at that time. And we're just asking that if it's possible that we can get the amended CUP approved so that we can still move forward with everything else. Right now, we have a timeline that we're trying to keep in with the construction of the property. If we get bumped, it's not a short amount of time that it bumps us out quite a bit with the scheduling of the contractors and everything that are in there.
Okay. Okay, so the problem, the issue, the concerns of some of us are when we haven't seen it, we can't hold you to it.
Correct, and I guess what I'm asking is approval on it with a condition stated in there that
you will
are
meet
able
the
to review the
50%.
plans, and if that doesn't meet, then we have to still work on it, that way,
Okay. So if the council decides to approve the CUP, that allows you to
It allows us to
order,
get,
stay in line or stay,
it allows us to stay in our construction schedule and not be bumped. The problem that we're facing with the materials availability, nobody's ordered nothing because we don't have any approvals yet, so they're not gonna order materials, they're not gonna have all these things, and so if I don't get that, we get bumped out of that line, and then I don't know when those materials would be available again, or when the crews could be scheduled in to start construction. So if I can get that conditional approval of, then they can put us on the schedule, stay on the schedules, and everything is gonna stay moving in the direction we're hoping it can stay moving.
and how confident are you that you will meet this 50%?
100% confident that we'll meet it. It's the only way through it.
100%. That's better than 50%. So, all right.
It's become clear that that's the only way through this, so there isn't, in our conversations with Ben and earlier with what the attorney was saying and all that, that's really the only option that we have in it, so it's a matter of just getting that design on paper so that you can view it, but it's gonna take us a little bit of time. We couldn't get it done for today.
And I don't think there's much hesitancy of approving the size of the building. It's just when we don't see what,
Right,
when,
what it's gonna look like, and that's why I asked it that a condition be placed inside of that as well. That-
okay. All right, discussion. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, question, so we could assume that, the street facing elevation, it'd be 50% brick, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty easy to envision on a square box, so I would be fine with it.
So this is Janet. I actually have a couple questions. So I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and I thought I recall you saying that you wouldn't be able to do 50% brick unless you redesigned some of the interior bracing or framework to support that. So without knowing what your final design is, how do you order materials?
The materials being ordered is going to be, once the plan is approved, what I'm trying to hold myself into is the construction schedule. They won't put us in their construction schedule
So,
if I don't have an approval for it to actually have the crews build the building.
okay.
The only thing that's gonna change in the structural side of the building is going to be internal wood that's gonna have to be placed in there to make that south or east facing wall be able to withstand the forces that are gonna be on it. The rest of the building can be ordered, you know, the internal posts and wood and tin and all of that stuff can be brought in.
So my concern, I have no problem with your project at all. I mean, glad to have you expand. And I was at your site in Blaine, and actually talked to one of the employees there, so I totally get why you need to do
Yeah,
this.
it's a little tight there.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So that part will be great. My concern is that even by putting that condition in, we lose any leverage we have if we don't like what it looks like, because you've gotten the approval to move forward, right? So I'm trying to think, like, is there a way that we can both get what we need? And how soon do you need to move forward? What I'm thinking is, and how soon do you think you can get the elevations? Because we can always call a special meeting in between, I mean, if everybody's willing, that we could, and we have done that before, where we will come in and we will take this one item and that'll be it, and it's very quick. But at least then we know everybody's on the same page and everybody sees it. So I think if you could tell us, like, oh, I could have the elevations by, pick a date, and if that date still works with your need to line up construction, I mean, that could possibly be an option we could consider. That would make me feel better anyways.
Right. My hopes is that we would have, well, one question that I would have is how soon prior to said meeting would you want to have to review? My understanding is for this one, we would have had to have information to you by Friday, last Friday, for you to review prior to the meeting. So I would assume that same time frame would be sufficient.
Well, if we only have one item to review, it probably doesn't need to have that long of a lead time, but I defer to Elizabeth on that.
You know, if 3 days is fine, I need 3 days notice for a special meeting. So if you don't have a date, I need at least 3 days advance notice. So I think it's probably the same timeline to post a special meeting and 3 days for the council to review the materials.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may comment, the effect of the condition is if it's not satisfied, the CUP can be suspended. And so there is leverage in the sense that the project could be stopped. Now, that's not ideal, that's not what you want, but just in the alternative, if you adopted a motion with a condition, the council still has the ability, and I'm making that clear on the record and to the applicant, that you can stop the project. So that's their risk. You know, if they want to do this, if they want to pull a building permit, you know, let's say it's approved tonight with this condition, they're at risk of the project stopping, you know, which is probably more expensive than delay. So I do think you do have that leverage, but I think either alternative can work.
I mean, I prefer to see what we're approving up front, but if that's difficult logistically, I mean, I'm one of 5, so, or one of 4, I guess, because Sue is recusing herself. That's just my feeling. And if we can make it work, and I know, Elizabeth, there's a few dates that are kind of off the table for you, so I don't know how hard or difficult it would be to get us what we need within the time period you need and the time period that people are available. But if we could do it, that would be my preference. Again, one of four.
Shelley, what's your preference?
I look at this applicant differently because he's been a good neighbor. I'm really impressed that you have a buffer between our residents and you so that we haven't had any problems. To me, I would feel like I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt. If we have some leverage, then I think that's good enough for me because I look at the businesses in Columbus as being part of the Columbus family, no matter what, because we've accepted them already. So I would be willing to work with you on that. I have one more comment, and that is that you had some information about plants that were being put around the building, and I noticed that there was like oak in there, and we have oak wilt in Columbus, and I don't know if you know that, but I just wanted to mention that to you and the fact that, you know, if you want quick coverage, it seems like the evergreens are probably the fastest way to go. But anyway, I just wanted to make that. But I am for allowing them to go ahead with the caveat that they would, you know, have the 50%. I'm not quite sure what went on in that meeting about the variance. I would have looked at a variance too, based on the fact that these people had had a business here. They said they wanted a new, you know, phase to it years ago. And because we're trying to clean up our act a little bit, you know, in our commercial areas, it makes it kind of hard on the guys that have been here. So anyway.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my comment on the variance was you didn't have, the question isn't properly in front of you without a variance application. So there's no way to vary the standard without that application. So if they wanted to do that, that would set them back 60 days,
Okay.
you know. So you could certainly make that decision, but it would be in relation to an application.
Rob?
I'm good.
Yeah. So how long of a delay regarding Janet's concern? What, you have an idea how?
I don't know. I'd like to give you a date, but I don't have any idea what the engineer's backload is or where they're at with things. I've pushed pretty hard the last few days to the point they stopped returning my phone calls. And
Just like everybody else is pushing. So then
Yeah.
I'll ask our council one more time. If we go through with this tonight, adding the extra condition, the city still has the control if they don't show the right, or don't show elevations that we approve of. We've still got control to shut it down. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can think of some examples. I probably don't need to give them. They're in the freeway district, you know, where there was certainly the legal authority to continue to work through building elevations. I will give one example, the condition that attached to Love's to come back with screening after the approval, and they met that, and that worked fine. So you've got a couple examples, some better than others, of that working out. So I'm comfortable that that can work. I always want the applicants to know, though, when they proceed ahead of that, that they're proceeding somewhat at their risk. So the council could say, nope, that doesn't work, you didn't meet the condition. So, but you understand that.
yes, we understand that.
So it's clear, correct?
Correct, it's clear.
Yeah? Would someone like to make the motion?
I'll make
I
the
can.
motion to move the conditional use permit amendment for Blake Drilling Company Incorporated based on adopting the associate planner report findings of facts 1 through 39 and conditions 1 through 32 with an additional condition that the applicant will present, well, they may present updated building elevations in the future, and that this motion or this approval of the application is based on the fact that they will do 100% of the work that is required for the east-facing, is it the east-facing or is it the whole thing?
It would be the east-facing, facing Lake Drive, yes.
Right. And updated building elevations rendering consistent with the code standard of no more than 50% metal materials facing the public right-of-way, which is the east direction.
This is Rob, I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions or discussion?
Is there a way we can set a date rather than sometime in the future? I mean, the proposed motion was suggesting April 13th. Do you think you could have it by then?
Yes,
Can we amend the motion to have a date then?
I think it was in the motion.
No, she said sometime in the future, didn't you? I think
But
you
then
said
she
it.
read April 13th.
Oh, I'm
She
sorry.
did say both. so
Okay,
might
I
have been
missed it. I'm sorry. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So
Shelley's like, what did I say?
it's moved and seconded. Let's call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? There we go, kids.
awesome, thank you very much.
Start finding your brick.
Hopefully you can get that price locked in, huh? I
That
know how
is-
that goes lately.
Yeah, it is crazy right now, for sure. So, yes, thank you very much.
All right, moving on to letter D, staff and consultants report, engineer report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Our first item on my report is the continued discussion on the 182nd Lane Cul-De-Sac. I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail other than to say that we were directed to evaluate option 3. That has been staked in the field, and I don't know if anybody's had the opportunity to review that, but Jim and I did evaluate that in the field, and we believe that this is a feasible option to construct. The only item that we saw that would need to be addressed over and above what we knew about was the removal and relocation of an existing culvert under the Herzog driveway. That's no issue in terms of feasibility. I did provide an estimate of what I believe the project might cost. That would be subject to bid quotations. But the total project cost, that as I see, would be $34,000, subject to, again, bid quotation, and that would also include cost for survey and design, but did not include any cost for legal or easements or that kind of thing, so.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I did review the legal costs, and I asked our attorney what he thought the legal costs would be, meaning title work and that sort of thing, and he indicated that it would probably be in the $15,000 area. However, we did receive emails and from one of the property owners indicating that we did not have estimates for acquisition of easements, and this council really didn't talk about acquisition of property, and if we were going to entertain the conversation about acquisition of easements, then I will defer to our attorney, because I think during our conversations, it was his recommendation that we would have to have a closed meeting in order to discuss land acquisition.
Mr. Mayor and Council, that's correct. If you think about some of the recent transactions, you've done land transactions, you've done those discussions in closed meeting to allow you to consider discussions regarding value and pricing and what the authority that you might give to the staff to negotiate those acquisitions. So if you want to entertain that discussion, it really should be in a closed meeting to give you the latitude to have a full discussion about value, our authority to negotiate it, if any, and then we would, all of those minutes, of course, would become public after the transaction is concluded. But for that purpose, there is a provision in state law that allows for that closed meeting discussion. And we've used that, as you know, in recent property transactions.
And is that your recommendation to us?
It is if you want to go forward with this proposal, because it's our understanding that the city will likely need to acquire some additional rights. The good news is, as shown in this map, that the city does have control of a significant amount of that right-of-way, either within the existing roadway to the west or in the existing easement to the east. And so it would really be acquiring the balance needed for the cul-de-sac. So I don't, today as we sit here, it doesn't seem like a big expense, but we would need your specific authority, and we can't really get that from you until we present what those values might be, based on some study of the comparable sales and so forth.
Anybody have questions?
So this is Janet. I think I received the same email that you did, Elizabeth. And so it appears that the one property owner is pretty adamant that she's not interested in donating. The other three were, but we've also heard from one other property owner who said, if you pay for one, you pay for mine too. So it would seem prudent to me to have that work done, I guess, in advance to say, get the assessments or whatever it is you have to do to say what's the fair market value if we do decide we would want to move forward with that. Otherwise, I don't know how we move forward with this without a challenge.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, in addition to getting just basic assessment data, which is relatively easy, right? It's available on the county website. We would do a very limited review of comparable sales. When I say limited, we're not going to do a full appraisal, but that would tell us how close the assessed value is to true market value. And so we would do both of those reviews prior to a closed meeting, most likely at your next meeting.
All right, very good. So I'll make a motion to direct the city staff to continue discussion of property acquisition for the 182nd Land Cul-De-Sac to a closed meeting on April 13th, 2022, which will be after our next council meeting. Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
Is there any questions or discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Kevin?
Mr. Mayor, the next item that I have is a discussion of the 2022 proposed pavement improvement project. The Public Works Director and I are going to kind of tag team this, but I'll set the table a little bit here. So the project area that we're talking about is what's known as the Kettle River Heights neighborhood. I apologize, I didn't include a map on the initial information I provided for the agenda, but you should have a map now that indicates the project area with the streets outlined in yellow. As Jim and I have evaluated this project and scoped it out, we did get some pavement cores in this neighborhood to try to determine the best and most efficient and economical means of trying to rehab this pavement out in this neighborhood. And basically what we're recommending is to do what's known as a reclamation project. Basically, a piece of equipment comes in and essentially grinds up the existing pavement and the underlying aggregate base into one product, basically. And that material is then used as the base for the new pavement. And so essentially after that existing pavement section is reclaimed, we have to go in and remove out a few inches of that material so that we make room for the new pavement. And so we would remove 3 to 4 inches of that existing reclaimed material, compact that, and then pave that with 3.5 inches of bituminous material. And so I provided a cost estimate based on recent bid information and historical bid averages, and also included costs for design and bidding and construction management services. And so that estimate is just over $500,000. And so with that, Jim has some additional information based on his budgeting information, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hey, and this is Sue. I just have a quick question. You mentioned a map, and I don't have a copy of a map.
Mr. Mayor and council members, in your additions, on the last page, which is page 3, there's a map. There wasn't a map in your agenda packet, but in the additions, there is.
Oh, there it is.
Right on the third page of the one that you just picked up.
This one?
This here?
Yeah.
No, this is my original packet. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Proceed.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council, the mayor and I have had some conversations in the last couple of weeks about project costs and, you know, as we all know, gasoline is more expensive today. It's all based off of the price of a barrel of oil, and that actually affects the costs of our projects as well. So I go through every year and I have a plan sheet and talk about different projects and things like that. This is the 2022 project. My budget for that project is less than Kevin's. They generally are. But with that being said, my budget was just a little over 400,000. I think it was 402,500 or something like that. So literally almost 100,000 less. I can tell you that as a general rule of thumb, my numbers are always based off of previous projects. So I will take the total cost of a project and I will divide that by the mileage. And that's how I just do my quick budget numbers. So I don't have to go through and do all the legwork that Kevin does. My numbers are always pretty close for budgeting purposes. So that's how I come up with my numbers. So ours generally don't jive in that sense. The engineer's estimate is almost always higher than mine. And we always hope that you get favorable bids and they come back cheaper. I will just throw for instance, the last project that we did, Notre Dame and 181st, my estimate was $700,000. It came in at slightly over 500, and the balance of that money is what we used to forward onto Hornsby Street. So you and I have had this conversation, Mr. Mayor, and it would be my recommendation that we at least move forward with the process and get bids. And if the bids come in outlandish, then we have a discussion to say, you know, I think these bids are way too high and it's worth waiting. But, you know, people potentially are hungry, and, you know, some people bid things at a good rate, and it may or may not be worth doing. So this is not generally how we work through this process, but since the mayor and I have had conversations, Kevin and I thought before we do a bunch of work and put a bunch of time into it, we thought we would run it to the council and say, you want us to move forward and do the process or not? So that's kind of what we're looking for tonight.
And, excuse me, again, just to add to Jim's information, oftentimes contractors, they lock in their fuel and oil prices early in the season under contract. And I don't know what amount of material they contract out so they can lock in their prices. And I don't know what the bidding market is going to be, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. If we're in a short blip of cost inflation, or if this is going to be sustained. And so I would just echo Jim's recommendation that we move this project to bid and then see how the bids come out before making a final determination. But obviously that's a council decision.
So Jim and I talked about this. I'll just ask it in the record here. So if it comes back and it's outlandish, and we decide we don't want to do it, then you simply go through and do your seal coating and crack patching and whatever?
I
Or
would-
is the road gonna disintegrate by next
I
spring?
would not do a seal coat on there. I mean, it's just not worth spending that kind of money on it. But I would go through and, maybe do some crack filling in there if it's deemed necessary. But mainly fill potholes and just make sure that everything is kosher, and we would just move on.
Yeah.
This is Janet. I have two questions, actually. One is, I know, maybe 6, 9 months ago, I think you gave us a list of what the projects are, road projects are for the next year or two. I don't remember this one being on there. Maybe I just missed it, but I remember Hornsby, I remember, Crossways possibly, I remember, but I don't remember this one.
As a general rule of thumb, I don't necessarily tell you what the projects are. I just say that there's projects. So I mean, I can give you 10 years worth if you want to hear about it, but it potentially is somewhat fluid. So if a particular road all of a sudden falls apart, that one maybe moves up on the list. So I assess the roads every year. I look at the age and life and how much maintenance we do on things, and sometimes I switch things around. Maybe we've done I'll call a substantial patch on something, and it seems to be holding, so I'll push that one back out a little bit. So I don't necessarily say during budget talks that this is going to be the project that we're doing. We just kind of talk about projects. So I'll call this as my work paper side of it, and I show you, what my budget numbers are. So you approve my blacktop budget at, I don't remember what it is, $480,000. That's what I bring to you guys and show you. I don't necessarily show you what I'm going to spend it on.
Okay, so I misunderstood. When we actually saw names like Furman over by Thurnbeck and stuff, I assumed those were, these are the next,
So-
the next projects on the list. But that's okay. I mean, I know you have a formula, or not a formula, but a,
Spreadsheet.
time, yeah, and, the life of a road is X, and you keep track of that, so I get that. My second question is, there was an article in the Forest Lake Times on March 10th that Forest Lake Public Works was talking about an anticipated 30% increase in the cost of bituminous, and anywhere from 30 to 200% increase on each of the other line items. So, I mean, I read that and went, holy, are we going to be able to do anything with roads this year? And I agree that, there's no problem going out for bids and seeing what you get, but my sense is that it might be pretty scary. The other question I have is, our project, West Freeway North, is that a project that was scheduled for this year? Because that one, we have a time, I think, frame that we're supposed to meet for the grant purpose. And I really would, if we really think it's going to cost much more money and we might run into problems where we have to plug that grant money, I'd rather have, no. Are you shaking your head, Elizabeth?
I think we're, I think we're on target, but yeah, I know there could be, I'm not sure we have a good number for shortfall.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that if that construction was planned to start this year, and things are going to be way more expensive, but we have to get it done because that's the agreement with the grants, I'd rather not spend money on something that was discretionary and make sure we have enough to get that one done, because that might cost us the grant. That's,
Just to add to that too, we're in good shape in terms of timeline and using the grant. I mean, there's really no sunset on the state park road account. That pretty much is open until we get the project done. The LRIP state bonding money, as I recall, we're not under any tight timeline
okay.
in completing that project and still being eligible for the grant, so.
Is that construction scheduled to start later this year?
So just to give you an update on that project, we're currently in final design. We just completed review of what we call the 60% plans, And so the SRF, the consultant putting the plans together, is proceeding to complete that last 40% of the design, and they had hoped to have that essentially near completion in the month of April, so that we can get the plans submitted for, they have to go to the state for their review, and the county will have, and we'll have, obviously we'll all have opportunities to review the final design, but I would anticipate, probably within a month that we would have pretty well the plans completed and then in for review. The scheduled, we're kind of targeting August, sometime late summer, early fall to bid the project and maybe get some work done this fall, but primarily the bulk of the work will likely be done next year.
Okay. And then my last question is, when I looked over the list here, one of the items was curbs. And I drove out there today. I don't see curbs on any of those streets. So why do we have curbs in the budget?
If you scroll off to the Vassar Street Northeast, that kind of the leg that runs, I'll call it to the north,
Yeah.
that has curb and gutter. It's not concrete curb though, it's asphalt curb.
I drove that whole thing. I didn't see curb. Really?
If you
not very
drive
high.
through there, so the shoulders on that road are higher than the road. And it's not like a Zurich Street curb. It's more of a just kind of a ramped up radius curb, so it doesn't look like a normal concrete
Okay.
curb. And they also blend in, of course,
Right.
because it's asphalt.
Yeah, it's all black, so it's hard to distinguish.
The plow might have chewed some up too, huh?
Well, it's older, so yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of a beating, and the grass grows through it. I mean, there's all sorts of things that start to deteriorate all of that over time. So
Okay.
All right.
So this is Suga. I have one question, just to kind of tag on to that. Was this something, so did you have it on the plan or did you look and see this is really in bad shape and we need to move this one up? Or have you gotten complaints from?
this one was just on my plan. So I
Okay.
mean, I'm as honest as the day is long. If you told me today that you weren't going to do it, it's not like I'm going to be in dire straits like we've had many conversations on Hornsby Street that I was worried about plowing the road into the ditch. I don't have that concern here. It's just not in good shape.
Okay.
So-
And I'm totally fine with getting a estimate.
Do you want to make the motion?
Yeah, Janet, just to speak to your talk of material going up and such, I just heard today that contractors are now bidding with what's called a material escalator. So the owner is on the hook for whatever that escalator may be. If it goes up 30%, it goes up 30%, and that customer is to pay it. I don't know if that would be something we would have to deal with in this situation. I am for going to bids with it. Question, though, for Kevin. The creek that runs through it, that comes out of Lamprey Pass and then runs through, I believe it's 167th, is that our responsibility to replace that culvert that goes underneath that street, or is that Carlos Avery's?
I'll let Jim has the background on that.
So the ditch line that runs through there, all of those ditches were done with a Rice Creek project.
Yep.
Any of the culverts that go underneath any of our roads, though, we are responsible for.
Okay.
So driveway culverts, not us. But if it crosses under one of our streets, then they are our responsibility.
Okay, thank you. And then one other thing is, it says 44 on the mailbox supports. Is the city paying for new mailbox posts for the residents? Is that typical in street projects? Just 'cause
Yes.
I'm not
So-
familiar.
So we've haggled about this over the years, and a couple of projects we didn't do it. And then, so the previous councils talked about it after the fact, and they said, well, we didn't put it in the project, but we will allow residents to buy them, and then Public Works would put them in. And that was potentially considerably more money and time by the time you figured the residents would come here, they would talk to, you know, somebody at the counter, they would do the paperwork, they would call Public Works would call for locates, we'd go out and put one up, and then somebody would come in 3 days later, you'd go through the whole process again, and it was somewhat of a nightmare. So then they just decided at that point that we were just gonna add them in. So if we do a reconstruction project or a paving project at that point, they would all be replaced, they would all be legal height, they would be conforming to postal service regulations, and, you know, quite honestly, way easier for us to maintain.
Perfect, thank you
And
for
then
that response.
And then the breakaway style, so that
Right.
if you hit them with a snowplow or whatever, they
Just
spin
send a
back.
garbage can into one. You guys don't do that.
We do not.
No, that's the county.
So Jim, do you ever get pushback on that? Like people want their own mailboxes and so like they don't want you to stick your standard?
I have
Post-
never gotten pushback on it. I have, if you drive down Howard Lake, you see that some people would replace them with something else. And if they get hit, we won't replace them because they're not that breakaway style. They're closer to the road, they're not drive under. I mean, there's some nuances there that,
Okay,
that we won't replace those because we already replaced them.
okay. Curious.
And just as additional information too in regards to materials, obviously this is a, you know, pretty limited on the number of materials we need to construct this project. I mean, it's bituminous, it's the mailboxes, it's, I think we got 1 or 2 culverts that we got to replace. So it's very limited. I mean, I just had a discussion internally in my office this afternoon about projects that have ductile iron water main pipe. They're saying they can't deliver ductile iron until September. You may not get hydrants until 2023. So there are other projects that involve underground utilities that would be subject to the types of material, extreme material costs. This project, less so just because there's fewer materials involved, so.
Okay, well, this is Sue. I can make a motion. I move to direct city engineer to move forward with the Kettle River Heights Improvement Project by obtaining
Bids.
price quotes. Or
Yeah, bids, we'll advertise
Bids.
and obtain bids.
Is there a second?
It's Rob, I'll second it.
It's moved and seconded. Any other questions or discussion?
This will just go through the bid process, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Number 14, attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just one quick legislative update. So in addition to our lead author in the Senate, Karen Housley, we now have a lead author in the House, Kelly Morrison. She represents 4 communities in the West Metro that are on the list of benefited communities under the Small Cities Bill. In addition, we have Shelley Christensen, who represents Oak Park Heights. You may know that name since she's from the east side of town. And she is going to be an author on the House bill as well. So we've got a good, strong set of authors. That bill will be introduced next week in the House. So we'll be in the House and in the Senate and looking for hearings in both bodies. So we're moving.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. That's good news. Number 15, Mayor and City Council members report. Sue, have you anything?
I do not have anything.
Shelley?
Nothing.
Rob?
I only had one thing, and it was related to what Bill said. I got to have a conversation with Karen Housley. Brought that up to her as at Thomas Oney's retirement deal. It was held at my work. So I took the time to ask her about that, and she said that she was going to make it happen. So let's just hope that happens.
That's even
right?
better news.
Yep, so that's all I got.
Good. Janet?
I have 2 things. One is, it's that time again to look at our Sunrise River WMO budget. There's a copy of it in our packet and also a little mini report that updates you on what's been accomplished in this past year. The budget, just as a reminder, the budget that we accepted as part of their 10-year plan was $50,000 overall per year. This year's budget is coming in at $44,500. That's not, that was intentional to try to bring the cost down. The 2 years prior, we also drove the cost down, but we did that by using some reserves that they had. Last year's total budget was $47,372, so we're coming in just about $3,000, a little over $3,000 less than we did last year. And the way that we did that was to eliminate this alum study that they were going to do on Coon Lake that didn't really make a lot of sense to do because the cost of doing it, you can do the study, but then the cost of actually doing the alum treatment was like $1 million, and where are we going to get that money? So it's like, why are we going to do this study? So we took that out of the budget, and that lowered it pretty significantly. Last year, Columbus's proportional share of that budget was $9,500. This year, we're going at $93.46. I heard just yesterday that Ham Lake approved the budget, so they not only approved the $2,000, up to $2,000 for the JPA, but they also passed a motion to approve the budget too. So I would be looking for us to do the same so we can report back that we're accepting it or not. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions, anyone? Then I'll make the motion to approve the 2023 Sunrise WMO budget in the amount of $44,500 with the Columbus prorated portion of $9,346.73 as presented. Is there a second?
This is Shelley, I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Before we move off of that, I want to tell Janet, thank you for going to these meetings that everybody hates and
They
getting.
kind of grow on you, like algae.
Oh, and getting Ham Lake to pass it. I know you had to wrestle with them. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Then I have one more thing, and that's an update on the accountant position. And I passed down just a one-pager Personnel Committee report, but I'll quickly go over it, and there is one action item that I'm looking for. So I think back in early February, we gave you an update that our accountant, Bill Werner, had resigned, and we were moving forward with posting the position. We did not get any applicants the first round of posting, nor did we on the second round of posting. We know it's a tough market. We know that there's a lot of competition. Accountants in general, I've talked to a couple of people that are in charge of hiring accountants, one at Cargill, one at the U, and it's been tough to bring them in. And there's evidently a shortage of them, or people don't want to do it anymore. I'm not sure what. So the Personnel Committee met for 2 weeks and looked at like, what do we need to do differently here? Fortunately for us, we have this wonderful person that has come in as a consultant to get us ready for our prep. Her name is Lissa, and she has had lots of jobs in the past, one of which included hiring accountants for a nonprofit that she worked for. So she gave us some really valuable feedback about the work that she's been doing for us and where she thought it fell in terms of, you know, what level of accountant we should be looking for. And I think, as you can imagine, with a one-person show, you know, the accountant's going to wear a lot of hats. It's not just entering, doing journal entries or paying, doing accounts receivable and accounts payable and things like that. It's far more than that. So you need someone who can be proactive, someone who can, look at the books and anticipate not just problems, but pick things out that don't look quite right. Generate some reports for Elizabeth and Jim when they need them, instead of having them try to generate the reports themselves, things like that. So she gave us some really valuable feedback on what she felt was an appropriate level. And in fact, I totally agree with her based on what I know, and what Elizabeth and I have talked about, that we, that we were probably shooting too low for what we really need, for this city. So what we'd like to do is to move forward with reposting the position, but reposting it as a senior accountant rather than just an accountant. There is a budget impact if we are to do that. And so we looked at what that would be. Elizabeth went through the process of regrading the position at the senior level, looking at the sort of new levels of responsibilities. I also went to some position management documents that I had, and from the university, since they're actually pretty close to the state, and state is what Elizabeth ends up comparing to, payroll documents and things like that. And interestingly, and actually luckily, we did this independently, and we came back and it pretty much was the same number. So I feel pretty confident that we hit it right. So the budget impact overall for this year would be about somewhere between $6,000 and $7,500 more than what we had budgeted for. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that that we are going to pay a little bit more per hour, somewhere between $1.26 and $1. Where's my numbers here? $1.26 or to $2.60 an hour difference for the senior position than what we had for our accounting position. And we would be increasing the position from 31 hours a week for 8 months of the year. I don't know if you remember that, but he worked 31 hours a week for 8 months and then worked 40 hours a week for the year-end stuff. We would make this 40 hours a week straight through. And Lissa felt that that was appropriate for the work that she's been doing for us. So we would have a budget impact. I have not had time to work with Elizabeth to rewrite the job description, but we'd like to get this posted and not wait for another 3 weeks until our next meeting. So what I'd be looking for the council to do is to approve the salary or the budget increase based on the increased salary and the increased number of hours. And then what we'll do is we'll have the position description ready. Just, you don't have to approve it, but for your information so you can see what it looks like at our April 13th meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess the other thing, which is in the report but I didn't mention, is some of the extra work that Lissa is doing for us as she's here as the accountant. She's about halfway through the work she needs to do to get us ready for our audit, which will be the week of May 2nd. But she's also volunteered to write a payroll manual so that when we do get an accountant, we actually have something documented, and that is going to be really valuable. And if we're lucky enough to get somebody hired before she leaves, then she would obviously be helping to orient that person too. And she's redoing our asset system, which I think is the roads and all of our capital equipment and all that kind of stuff. And when I say redoing it, I mean within the accounting system. And did you have anything else you want to add to that, Elizabeth?
Nothing further to add on that, but I will say that she's working extremely hard throughout for our accounting system, and it's been a pleasure working with her. She's been able to give us feedback, and so we've been progressing along with our audit, which now is up to 102 items. So it's a lot of work to put into doing in-year audit, and she has been able to transition very well and fits in with our group. And the asset system is literally from the ground up. You know what I mean, at this point, so.
Okay.
I just have one quick question on, does she think, or did anybody give any feedback on the likelihood of somebody applying at the higher position, the senior, rather than the regular?
I think we'll attract a different pool of interest at that level. The level that we were really looking at with the other posting was really entry level, like right out of college. And so hopefully this might, attract somebody who might be working for somebody else, has, more years of experience and is looking for something that's a little different than what they're doing now. So I think from that perspective. I'm going to do my best to write a really compelling job description that'd be like, wow, who wouldn't want this job? Who wouldn't want to come to Columbus and work here?
Oh,
Shelley,
you go,
quit giving
girl.
me that look.
I guess I'm looking at this as, Bill was full-time, right?
He was 31 hours for 8 months and then 40 hours for the 4 months.
Okay, so, conservatively, we were talking about taking his pay, and then we're gonna add $13,000 to $15,000 a year going forward. And then we talk about step increases next year, and we talk about, cost of living increases. It's painful. I mean, this is really painful. I mean, I know you guys have been looking, everywhere, but are we looking, you say you want somebody a little bit more than coming out of college?
Yep.
We're a little town, a little city, let's put it that way.
Actually, I'm really glad you're making these points.
Yes.
Because I would have said the same thing, but the complexity of what we do as a little town, from an accounting standpoint, is pretty amazing. And that's because we have utilities and we have utility billing, we have a lot of assets, we have a lot of roads. And towns that don't have all that, don't have that kind of complexity. And I'm sure Elizabeth can give you a laundry list of the other stuff that makes it harder. And I think the other part of it is that you're looking at a pool of accountants that have either an interest or some expertise in fund accounting, which is only used in government and higher ed, as far as I know. So it's a smaller pool that might be interested in something like this. Someone like Bill came into the job and he did not have fund accounting, and what did it take, 2 years to get him up to speed?
More
I
than,
mean,
yeah.
and the thing is that, everything gets harder. What I'm trying to figure out, part of what I'm trying to figure out is how do we get some of this stuff off of Elizabeth's plate and the reporting. I mean, there's no reason she needs to go pull finance reports because we have an accountant that couldn't do that for her. We need an accountant that can do that for her. And I think that's a different skill set than what we've been looking at before, which has been primarily doing journal entries and reconciling and payroll. And because, if we have an accountant that can only do those things, then we're paying a consulting firm or, to do what he can't do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a little bit painful, but if we were going to do this on our own and say what's wrong, how do we fix this and make it right, and who has the expertise on knowing what the right thing is to do, we'd go to a consultant, somebody like this. And I know Clifton Larson Allen is a very well-known firm, so I guess I trust what they say if they're saying that this is what it should be. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that would know more except for the people that are doing it. So I feel good about the direction, even though it is more money.
It is more money.
If I may speak, I agree with you, Shelley. It's horrifying.
Can you do your mic?
However,
Can you do your mic?
Your mic.
I can't hear you.
yeah, Shelley, I agree with you. It's horrifying. However, how many months did you have your previous job application out? A month or two?
No, like,
And nobody applied for it?
I advertised for 6 weeks.
Okay, so a month and a half.
And the only people who did apply didn't have accounting degrees.
So that spurs us on to try something different. And hopefully we would find somebody with a little bit, not a little bit, with the amount of money of,
it may be up to $14,000, $15,000 more a year than what we were paying, but that's what we need. I mean, that's what we need. And I will tell you, in full disclosure, when we were first going to position this, I argued with Elizabeth that we needed a higher level accountant, just based on what I've seen. And she, being the good fiscal conservative person that she is, said, no, I think we can get by with more of an entry level. We can't. Not only can we not do it from a work standpoint, we can't even find anybody who will do that position at that level. So, I mean, I felt, based on what I knew, that we were undershooting what we really needed for this city. And now we have an accountant consultant who agrees with that.
Yeah, actually, she was quite adamant. And of course, the qualified people aren't going to come work for 15 bucks an hour anywhere. So, and also we have more tax money coming in this year, we hope, with all the new additional buildings. That'll take a little paint off. We'll save some money on blacktopping. We can do that. And maybe nobody will apply, and then we really have trouble. I mean, the money is one problem, but we've got till May 15th. We're all gonna be taking turns doing books here because there's nobody to do it.
Well, and, you know, we can look at paying the hourly wages that I have here, and the consultant wages are over $100 an hour.
So anyway, I think we have to hold our nose and try it. And again, it's just okaying the funds and then running the ad and see if anybody applies, and if they're qualified, and if they love the atmosphere of beautiful Columbus.
My
So who wants
best.
to make the motion?
So I will make it since I did the report, and you guys can decide if you want to second it. So I'd move to approve an additional up to $7,525 for the accounting position, and authorize staff to go ahead with a posting once we get the job description finalized. And I will add that you will get a copy of that at our next meeting.
Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Sue, I'll second.
So if any, I have a question. So if it all goes well, how soon does this get posted, roughly?
Within a week.
And then you leave it for 2 weeks?
I posted for 2 to 3 weeks, but what we did last time was, as soon as I started getting applications, I started doing the interviews. So we started early, you know, and so by the time the posting concluded, we had already done first round interviews. So we were ahead of the game. So I think we'll probably do the same thing, because otherwise I'm going to start running out of time.
And not only that, as soon as, you found that with that position that you just referred to, that sometimes as we were calling people in, they'd already accepted other jobs. So it's like, as soon as you get an application that looks viable, you jump on it.
Any other questions or discussions from anybody?
This is Shelley. One thing I have to say is that in the motion, you quoted the 75-25, I think.
That's
I
just
think
for
it
this
needs to be
year.
noted, I understand that that's the impact for this year's budget, okay? But I think we have to make note that this is also talking about increasing, future budgets and increasing staff and increasing the step that we have had it at before, because it is going to impact us in the future. I really am not worried about 75-25. I'm worried about step increases and a person who will be costing a lot more. So I just want it on the record.
Anything else from anybody? So it's been moved, seconded, and discussed. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So now, just hope somebody applies who's qualified.
Keep our fingers crossed.
All right, moving on to the Columbus Event Committee Report. Shelley and Sue.
Well, this is Shelley. I, see that the staff has put out a background and a recommendation. I know you haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but basically we said that we felt that this was something that maybe that the Parks Board or Park Board should be looking at and possibly creating subcommittees for. Everything has become kind of focused on the Fall Fest, and I feel like it's not necessarily the Fall Fest, but community involvement and what we want to do besides Fall Fest, or in place of Fall Fest, or with Fall Fest. So I think that I would like to see it go to the Park Board, as well as what we discussed in the meeting, all of us, so.
Yep, and this is Sue. It was a good discussion, and it was almost the same discussion that we've had already in the past. Like, we know what the issues are, and we know what we'd like to do, but we really can't do it without a committee. and we don't have, even looking at other cities, they either have a staff person just for events, or they have a subcommittee. So I feel like at least going in that direction of getting a committee going, it would help, it's going to help the city be in control of whatever activities do happen. And hopefully we can get some good volunteers for that committee.
I have a question, a couple questions. Has anybody talked to the park board about this? Oh, there's a park board member out there. How does that work, Elizabeth?
So the park board doesn't meet until next week. And I think from the subcommittee's discussion, we looked at overall, where does this best fit in, especially if we're not focused on just Fall Fest. I think the subcommittee talked about what other types of events should we have, whether it was more community related, it was more of a gathering, more like Arbor Day, or whether we had a septic system class or a master gardener come in. And if we were going to look at it globally, like, are we going to have activities in the community center? Are we going to have activities in the park? Are we going to have an overall event yearly? Are we going to include the rice cycling events, in our yearly events? And if we were going to do that, you do need a subcommittee, or you need a person that's going to do that type of activity. And looking in other communities, they have a park and recreation department, and that's exactly what they do. They look at recreation, they look at what's going on in the parks and in the community center, and it's kind of pulled together because that's where you have all the sports-related events and those sorts of things that are organized by cities. And so we talked about where does it make most sense to have a subcommittee organized where you have a group of, and I think I put 7 to 9 members, that actually can, and it wasn't the park board, it was just going to be a subcommittee of the park board, and any park board member is welcome to be on the subcommittee. But again, just, having it in that genre so that the park board knows about the activities and maybe can have some suggestions, and, maybe they have a horseshoe tournament or a golf tournament, or I think they were thinking of different things in the park, and if we were looking at group events, maybe having them as group events. So it was really more of a place to put it, and that's where other cities put it. And so I thought, okay, if that's the case, then let's start in the right place and get a group of volunteers that actually want to do this. And at this point, I think if we start small, I think we can do something, and I think we can include the businesses, especially if we have a park event. Maybe it's not traditional Fall Fest where we're in all the buildings, but we can certainly do an outside event, have a lot of the businesses come in, sponsor some events that they would like to do, advertise from themselves, and such, and maybe have a class or two, during that event. So if there's other suggestions, from the council as far as where it should go, I think we're certainly welcome to entertain what you think a better place for it would be.
I have a second question. So it looks like, the theme and the objective of it is health, safety, and welfare, which is what the city does, right? So that makes sense to me. But I don't understand why we are saying we were going to do this without using tax dollars. I mean, health, safety, and welfare is what the city does and what we spend our money on. So I get when there was concerns about having Fall Fest be funded by the city when it was primarily used as a fundraising mechanism for nonprofits, a couple of nonprofits. But if the city takes it on and the focus of the event is health, safety, welfare, education, then it doesn't seem like it makes sense to me to not use tax dollars, because we use tax dollars in every other way that we promote those things. And we also budgeted for it.
I was, when I read this, I was surprised about without using tax dollars. That probably came from something I said, which was, I don't think that we should use tax dollars for specific groups that are raising money for their organization to give to others. If this subcommittee comes up with something where it does promote and foster community pride, I don't think that anybody had a question about being able to budget for it and that sort of thing. But it depends on what they come up with. And if it's, again, just the Fall Fest, and we're going to have several groups that come in and expect, you know, the money from the city for them to fundraise, I really had a problem with that, really from the very beginning, because I got sent to those classes. They told me I couldn't do that. So that's, I don't think, it's not going to be a problem, I think, to make it a budget item if it turns out that they come up with some concrete ideas and they have you know, volunteers that will be able to pull this together.
That's good, because I feel like if we're gonna try to turn the focus around to something like that, then it would be appropriate to use city dollars for that. So those are my two questions.
So is there the availability with this to turn it in, like you had said, fundraiser? I know over in Forest Lake, we'd done a fundraiser through a softball tournament to get lights out at the park. Is that something that we're able to do, you know, just an idea in conjunction with this? We put on a softball tournament, showcase our park, we generate income for it, which then could be used for the park. Is that something that's ever been done, or?
I think that the idea is that if you have like a fundraiser that you either contribute something or have money involved with the city, because the city is putting out money for, you know, porta potties and setup and cleanup and security and all that sort of thing. And it's just, you can't just extend that to just anybody because they want to earn a few bucks, you know? So if you did have, let's say, some type of maybe something where the businesses get together and that sort of thing, maybe that could be attached to it. The car show is great, and it doesn't cost any money, and maybe they want to attach to one of these things that they come up with. It's the question is you don't want to take something that is primarily a fundraiser for a few groups and provide city money, you know, even, you know, Elizabeth always used to say it cost $1,000, and it didn't cost $1,000. It cost more than $1,000 for the city to put that on, and you're taking taxpayer dollars and basically giving it to the Lions. Now, whether you felt Fall Fest fit into this fostering community pride or not, then that comes into play, and maybe it does. But the whole point is that when I came onto the Fall Fest, I looked at it as basically 3 different groups fundraising and then taking those funds and giving it to somebody else. And we are not in a position as a city to be able to do that. If we get some of this community pride, I guess, or we feel that is being answered, then yeah, then it's okay. So if you were going to come and say, will you sponsor us, you know, as a softball or whatever you're doing, I don't think we can do that, you know?
Right, right.
Mr. Mayor and Council, just a comment on probably more best practice than legal, but in other communities, what they do is if there's an effort to, you know, fundraise for the police dogs, for instance, or fundraise for the parks, you know, equipment, it's usually done by a third-party organization. It can be even just a non-entity, a collection of people. But then they end up fundraising on behalf of the community, and they make a donation to the city, and that's all recognized. It is very unusual, and I'm not even sure if we've ever looked at the legality of it, to have a city fundraise, you know, given that you have taxing authority, you know, that you would fundraise in addition. So I think if something grew out of this discussion, it would be a group of people interested in providing additional funds for the community rather than the city itself going out and fundraising.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
Sure. Any other questions or discussion? You want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion, but, okay, so I move to accept the recommendation from the event subcommittee and direct the city staff to work with the park board to create a subcommittee with the goals as listed, with the exception of what we talked about, with not using tax dollars. We'll just take that part out and make the understanding that if the focus is health, safety, welfare, education, then that would be an appropriate use of tax dollars.
You got a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any other questions or discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, Public Works, Jim.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Public Work Communications Coordinator report, Connor.
Only that work is beginning on the newsletter that has been pitched. So an email will be sent to you by the end of this week, just sort of starting to get the ball rolling on that, just starting to get you guys' opinion, and we'll make the formal report at the next council meeting, the second Wednesday of April.
All right,
So what's he saying is you're going to get more homework.
all right,
Just
just a little. So how long have you been here, Connor? A year, a month?
a month. Yesterday.
And how's it feeling?
Enjoying it still.
All right. Da-da-da.
You're doing a good job.
And we notice you're catching up with the minutes, so thank you for that. And let's hope it's the anniversary of a year before we know it, or it will be before we know it, but anyway, thank you. Elizabeth, City Administrator's report.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we're already down to letter E. So the next planning commission is April 6th at 6:30. There will be a city council workshop on April 12th at 5:30 and a city council meeting on the 13th at 6:30, after which we'll be having our closed meeting to discuss the 182 roundabout. Or,
Mr. Mayor and council members, the workshop, one of the items on the workshop is going to be the options coming back from Anoka County for the Camp 3 Kettle River Boulevard intersection. At a couple of workshops ago, they gave you the overview of what the feedback was from citizens when we closed the road, and now they'll be coming back with the options. So that presentation will start at 5:30 on the 12th.
yeah, thank you. Would anybody like to make the motion to adjourn?
This is Janet, move to adjourn.
And I'll second
Rob.
that. And I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?